dealt with their citizens, you see, was such in a balanced way that you can just imagine, you see, why they had the majority of the people wanting to be in that land, also with the very nice conditions. Now, there was another land that was connected, almost like a pyramid, if you will, where all the lands could connect with, hills and valleys. In this one land, it wasn't as many people in it, okay? They were just known as mostly quiet folk, if you will. But in that land, they had one person. See, remember, unlike the lion domain, so to speak, of the tribe, there were many lions, but really one main lion leader. Then in the land of the leaders, there were really quite a few that were overheads of, different groups of people and things of that nature. They just got along real good and worked along real good. Now, in this other land that I'm now describing, it was more of a wooded land, if you will, still good for growing things, you see. Still good for growing things. And there were a lot of hills with secluded spots. So unlike in the land of leadership where you could just look out your door and always see almost like a neighbor that you could have a nice meal with and chat and things of that nature, this other land, again, the people were not known for one particular tribe or land or name really at all, but they were known whenever they crossed paths, through the valleys where persons were traveling for different reasons, for buying, selling, or trading, or what have you, even with one another, because it was like a main hub still right in that middle. That when people say, I'm of this tribe, the Lion Brotherhood, or I'm with the leadership brotherhood, mostly these persons in this land that I'm telling you about now, when persons heard or saw them, they just knew, they are in the sage's land. See, there was one man, many wise persons, but still one man, one person, known as the sage's land. They just called it that. In addition to this, the persons in the sage's land, they didn't see him that often. They didn't talk that often to him. But they felt good being around that area just the same. And if something came up real serious, there were times, you see, at least maybe only a couple of times a month, that they saw him walking through, you see, the land. Now, keep this in mind. Even as the many years went by, because there always seemed to be the same sage for about decades and decades and decades of time, and then all of a sudden, somehow another one would spring up, you see, still in that land area. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, getting back to the help. Now that you actually have the layout of how the land looked, from the sage's land to the leadership land, which had the majority of the people, and then the lions, you can imagine that, as mentioned earlier, there was a situation that would come up from time to time dealing with the jackals and the hyenas that were actually outside that land. And boy, they would always be on the outskirts. And as I mentioned before, it was like they stayed away basically from the Lion Brotherhood tribe, basically, okay? But they were always trying to nibble or pick off somebody from the leadership tribe in that area. Now, it didn't mean that they didn't attack, the sage's land. But often between the woods and the secluded areas and just how those persons had an intellect for not only defense, because they could defend themselves, but they were very good, if you want to call part of defense, was hiding from the hyenas and jackals. So it was just too much work for them, but in the leadership land, that open green area, that beautiful place, it was such an abundance of people there that's where they mostly stayed on the edges and hoping to grab somebody or to do a quick raiding party or what have you and try to go into beyond the borders. Now, with this knowledge, out of all three of these tribes, if you will, who do you think did the most defending? I bet you already figured it out. Yes, it was the Lion tribe. Who do you think did the most organizing and preparation, whether it was for food and commerce and things of that nature? You may say the Sage tribe, and yes, they certainly had the same abilities. But here's another question. Who had the most people in the land? Yes, now you're going right back to the leadership tribe. So, the Sage's land were known mostly for where a lot of the art and creativeness was going on at constantly. And so when they would come out of the wooded areas and secluded areas and meet at the hub of the lands, they had so many things, wonderful things to share on the market and things of that nature. Well, in order to keep this, once again, nice working relationship, remember I told you, in the hub, there was this beautiful meeting place. I mean, it had everything. Plenty of food around it, water, on the edges of the different locations, north, south, east, and west. There was always somewhere where you could end up going out and a few feet later either eating and drinking and having an association and enjoying your company with everybody. Well, in this area, the Lion tribe, the leader of the Lion tribe, let's just call him the Lion. He was there all the time. So was the leader and different leaders, you see, because remember I told you that land just had so many that they will all meet, whether it was 9 or 10 of them, so to speak, and still sometimes just talk to that one lion leader as they, made their different plans. Mostly there was an arrangement, you see, that the sage would also come to that hub a couple of times a month. Now, the Lion and the leaders, they would be there 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, if we can use the time that we use to describe how they met. And the Lion would sometimes get to talking, and he would actually just roar. Why isn't he here? He know this is the day that we're here, and this and that. And so the other leader would just try to keep him calm and say, well, There's not a definite time. We just say we meet here on this day. But he knows we meet here early in the morning, you see. And there would be a time, normally close to noon, actually, lunchtime, when almost every time the sage would come in. Now, the way that he was dressed, his hair was not as long, you see, as the lion, or not as short as the leaders, but it was neatly groomed all the same, with also dignity, you see, around. And he moved like he had a universal time in every step. And boy, did that just make the lion upset at times. But he knew, as mostly, as the leader would say, we still gain a lot of value from what he tells us about these different things. And because look at the situation we got now. See, what had happened is, you heard me talk about the hyenas and the jackals. The defenses were starting to be worn down over the years, where it was making it easier for the jackals to actually, sad to say, pick off some of the people in that land. Now, they were not necessarily able to grab the leaders, in that land, which, hey, sometimes they even caught some of them. But in general, the people that were in that land did not have the capabilities or the abilities, period, to defend them.